Hey everybody, good evening and welcome to my regular Sunday night lives right here on my Facebook page, Caroline Strawson, Transformational Divorce Coach. So I'm really excited to be with you here this evening at 8 o'clock GMT. If any of you are joining me from wherever you are in the world, please do say hi and that you're listening in. If you want to, remember, I completely understand because obviously I specialise in narcissistic abuse. So I understand many people who watch me don't necessarily always want to comment or interact for fear maybe of what their partners or ex-partners are watching as well. So I do understand that. However, if you do want to come into my private, free, supportive group on Facebook, Divorce and Breakup Support After Narcissistic Abuse, then either pop me a message afterwards, evening Carol, pop me a message afterwards, or comment below asking for the link and I can send you the link so that you can join. There's over 3,500 women in there now, all so wonderful, so beautiful. This is why tonight's topic I'm extremely passionate about, because I tend to find with the women and men I coach, actually, because I do coach men as well, although obviously my group is for women only, I do have male clients. There's an undercurrent of the type of person that gets into a relationship with a narcissist, and that tends to be codependent, which I've done other videos on, and then also someone who is an empath too. So I'm really excited about tonight because I've got a little quiz for you just to see whether you think you are an empath. Now, you might be somebody who's just come across my page, maybe you are in a relationship with a narcissist, come out of a relationship with one, or maybe you're just really interested to find out if you are an empath. Because it's a word that we hear a lot, you know, empathy, empath, empathetic. So ultimately, thank you, Carol. Well, it's women like you that make it so wonderful. So I've got a little quiz for you this evening to see where you are on the empath scale. Now, there's a real difference between being an empath and being empathetic. Being empathetic is something like someone would tell you a really heartfelt story and you can really understand and feel empathy towards that person because you understand maybe some of the struggles that they are going through. But when they finish telling you, you can turn around, you can walk away, and although you might give it some thought, it isn't going to affect you moving forward. Being an empath is someone who potentially would listen to that story and relive it like it was their own, absorbing all of that energy, which again, if we don't have very clear boundaries with, can leave us feeling drained and exhausted. So I have a little quiz for you. So you might want to go and grab a pen and a piece of paper, just to literally, so that when you're answering these questions, you can just put a little line, because you can answer yes or no to the questions. And I've got 20 questions for you, just to see whether you are an empath. And even if you are an empath, how empathic are you? You know, are you just a little bit? Are you highly empathic? And ultimately, this is a really good way of deciding. So the first one, okay, and I'd love to, if you want to interact and obviously tell me where you are as well, please do so. So 20 questions, yes or no answers. Count how many yeses you get, okay, because then I will explain to you how you can work out what your results are with this empath test, okay. So number one, have you been labelled as too sensitive, shy or introverted? Okay, so has somebody said to you, and particularly again if you're in a relationship with a narcissist, and I had this, oh, you're too sensitive, you know, oh, not this again, oh, you're always like this, you're so sensitive, okay, can you relate to that? Maybe you're somebody who's shy. Now, I'm not particularly shy as such, and a lot of you would be surprised to know that I am. Hi Marta, I am an introvert, but I'm also an extrovert as well. So, which might sound a little bit like opposite ends of the spectrum, but I will make myself go and be out there for bigger purposes, but I do consider myself to be a bit of an introvert as well. But the too sensitive for me was a massive yes. So have you been labelled as too sensitive, shy or introverted? Okay, yes or no. So if you've got a yes, just put a little line or count on your fingers. Okay, so keep track. Do you frequently get overwhelmed or anxious? You know, are you somebody, if there's lots of things going on, are you somebody that really starts to increase your anxiety? If you look at your diary in the week and you think, oh my God, I've got this, I've got that, I've got a court case coming up, I've got this, I've got a job interview, I've got so much stuff to do, I've got all the washing to do. Are you someone who gets overwhelmed or anxious? So are you somebody who feels like that? Again, yes or no. Number 3, do arguments or yelling make you feel ill or uncomfortable? This is a biggie for me. You know, it used to be if I was around where people were arguing or there was conflict or anything else like that, I would feel desperately uncomfortable. I felt physically uncomfortable. It wasn't just a case of, oh, I don't like this. Physically, I felt uncomfortable, okay? So are you somebody that if you're around arguments or yelling, and this can be so true if you're in a narcissistic relationship or even coming out, you know, I found it every time there was any conflict, you know, that phrase, walking on eggshells, I used to hate it. I want it resolved straight away. And I always use the analogy, I wanted it to be pink fluffy clouds all of the time. You know, I hated that conflict. I hated the argument. I hated any yelling. And I really, really shied away from that. So are you somebody, do arguments and yelling make you feel ill and uncomfortable? Number 4, do you often feel like you don't fit in? So do you sometimes find, maybe if you're with a group of friends, maybe with your family, wherever that may be, do you sometimes feel like you don't fit in? That maybe you're a bit of an outsider? Yes or no? Number 5, you feel drained by crowds and need alone time to revive yourself. This one is so me. You know, crowded places. And I've spoken in front of lots of people before. I think the most I've spoken in front of is about 3,000 people. And obviously with that, there's a lot of people there. Now, I love speaking up on stage because I love getting my message out there. However, the crowds itself makes me feel very uncomfortable, and I have to do lots of techniques to get myself through that. When I'm up on stage, I'm kind of okay. You know, of course I'm nervous, but it's the crowds and everything that goes with it. It's the kind of beforehand as well. So are you somebody that you get drained by lots of people and you need alone time to kind of revive yourself? Number 6, are you overstimulated by noise, odors, or non-stop talkers? I certainly know for me, noise and strong odours really, really affect me. And again, I have to be really, really mindful about all of that as well. You know, we've just had my husband's 3 children for the weekend, and 2 of them, bless them, have been poorly. So it's been quite a quiet weekend, but sometimes there can be lots of fighting, lots of shouting. And I just need to come into my study sometimes just to catch my breath, just to kind of recenter myself as well. So are you somebody that gets overstimulated by noise, odours, or non-stop talkers? I'd love to know, for those of you who've joined from the start, how many yeses have you got so far? Bearing in mind we've done 6 questions, okay? So if you dare to share, how many yeses have you got so far? Number 7, do you have chemical sensitivities or you can't tolerate scratchy clothes? This is a big one for my son, actually. He likes to have nice things again. All are a yes. Okay, Serena. Okay, so we think, okay. And it's so interesting, isn't it? But I'm going to give you some really, really good tools and everything so you can protect yourself, because it is a gift being an empath as well. Yeah, okay. So we're all in this together, ladies. Okay. So going back to the scratchy clothes, you know, my son, in fact, both my children are empaths, and my son in particular with the scratchy clothes, ever since he was a baby, even now he doesn't, I mean, he's 14 now, he doesn't like wearing jeans because he likes to wear kind of soft clothes as well. Absolutely, empaths definitely enter the medical profession. We become light workers, healers. We like to help people, absolutely, and there's a lot of empaths definitely in the profession, in the medical profession. So number 7 again was, do you have chemical sensitivities or you can't tolerate scratchy clothes? Okay. Number 8. Do you prefer taking your own car to places so you can leave early if you need to? That's a really interesting one, and I so understand that. And again, this is about the control aspect of it too. So that if you're going anywhere, you know, do you like being the one in control of when you can leave? You know, because you never know whether there's going to be people there, you know, or whether you can make an excuse to go. So are you someone who always takes your own car to places so you can leave early if you need to? Number 9, This one's a really big one, and you may not realise this, and it's something that I'll talk about a bit further on in tonight's live as well. Do you overeat to cope with stress? So are you somebody, when you feel really, really stressful, are you an emotional eater? Because being an empath can have a massive impact on being an emotional eater if you haven't got those clear boundaries in place to recenter yourself as well. Yeah, same here, Marta. If I go into London, I don't like using the underground. I'll actually get an Uber now. Sometimes it actually works out the same price, to be honest. But I don't like going, I don't like the crowds. I don't like I like feeling like I'm in control of all of that as well. But I don't feel bad about doing that now. And this will be the difference maybe with some of the things, you know, I make these choices now based on knowing who I am and what I'm like. So, number 10, are you afraid of becoming suffocated by intimate relationships? Now, I know many of you are in a relationship with a narcissist or coming out of a relationship with a narcissist as well, because you follow my page. So this one might seem a little bit odd where you say become suffocated. And I thought long and hard about this, so that when I was with my ex-husband, I still didn't want to feel suffocated, yet I was still craving that feeling of love and from him. So I think for me that's kind of like a yes and no. So yes, I do feel suffocated sometimes if people are too intense with me, friends and relationships. I get a little bit, oh yeah, no, I don't like this as such. But when I was in a relationship with a narcissist, it was almost like the more standoffish he was, the more then I almost wanted that as well, because I suppose it was highlighting my feelings at the time of not feeling good enough. Number 11, do you startle easily? Now, I particularly know this for a lot of my clients and also those coming out of narcissistic relationships. You're very much in that fight or flight hypervigilance. So if there's a loud noise or something like that, it's really like you are and stuff, because you startle really easily because you've already got all that cortisol coursing through your body as well. So number 12, do you react strongly to caffeine or medications? So I'm really, really mindful about taking medicine. I'm a big believer in treating the cause, not just masking the symptoms. That isn't to say that I don't agree with conventional medicine, because I do, because I have a Bachelor of Science in Podiatry, so I have a medical background myself. But I'm also a big believer that nowadays a lot of doctors, sadly, due to the time they have, they just push pills onto people rather than actually looking at the cause. They will just treat the symptoms, and I think that is causing a massive problem, particularly in the Western world with that. So we use somebody who reacts to medications or caffeine, and again, I try and have non-caffeine. If obviously they don't have decaffeinated, I will have caffeine, but I also have a heart condition myself, so and I found out about 3 years ago, so I'm very, very mindful how much caffeine I have as well. And I know, where was it? I was away a few weeks ago and they only had coffee, caffeinated coffee, and I think I had 3 cups, and I remember coming home and I shouldn't have had that, and I was really jittery, and I really, really noticed it as well. So again, are you somebody that you react strongly to caffeine? Maybe if you have, 2 or 3 cups of coffee, can you really, really feel that? And the same with medications. Number 13. Now, this one was a no for me, but again, it could be a yes for you. Do you have a low pain threshold? Again, because a low pain threshold is associated with being an empath. Now for me, I know I'm an empath, but I've got a very, very high pain threshold. So I kind of think this one, I think it's one or the other. But obviously the test and the quiz that I am doing, which was taken from Judith Orloff, and I'll show you her book, which is amazing again, at the end of this, if you want to go off and read more about being an empath as well. It's very much associated with a low pain threshold too. So now we're on number 14. So we've had 13 questions so far. So who is willing to share so far how many yeses you've got out of 13? I'd be really interested to know. If you don't want to, that's absolutely fine. But if you want to, I'd be really, really interested to know. So out of the 13 so far, if I was thinking about maybe where I was, 5 years ago, for instance, I would probably be now out of 13, 11 yeses as well. So, okay, right, okay then, 9, okay then. So the next one, so now we're up to number 14, 12, wow. We've got some great empaths on here. And do you know what, it's such a beautiful gift. But we need to have boundaries, which I will help you talk about in a second. So number 14, do you tend to back off in large crowds? So if you're in a place where there's lots and lots of people, are you somebody who really embraces it, or are you somebody who kind of, you know, bit of a wallflower, steps back a bit, maybe surveying, maybe not just diving right in? So you sort of back off large crowds. Number 15, do you absorb? This is a massive one for me, massive one. The one probably I have had to work on the hardest. Do you absorb other people's stress, emotions or symptoms as if they were your own? Now, I could have been in a room with somebody, and if they were sad, my goodness, I would feel sadness. It would be like I was absolutely living and feeling what they were feeling in that moment, to the extent when I walked away, I felt exactly the same. Like whatever had happened to them, it happened to me as well. And this was a massive one for me to really learn how to manage my boundaries, particularly because I coach, you know, and a lot of the people that obviously that I coach are going through some really traumatic times. So I have to be really mindful about my boundaries. So although I am very empathetic to them, I've had to learn how to be that person, but also to protect myself as well. So not to lose that empathy that I have of being an empath, but to protect myself, because otherwise, you know, if I was doing 5 or 6 coaching sessions a day, which I do, I mean, I've got 5 coaching sessions tomorrow, for instance, and 2 of them are for 2 hours. So you can imagine if I didn't have clear boundaries with that, and they were telling me all of this stuff, and sometimes it's very traumatic, and I was absorbing all of that, I'd be a wreck by the end of the day. So I have to be really mindful of that. So are you somebody, yeah, Carol, absolutely, and I know you are, definitely, a woman after my own heart there. So are you somebody that you absorb other people's stress, emotions or symptoms as if they were your own? I mean, you guys know that I'm remarried now, and when my husband's feeling down or anything, it makes me, I don't like it. You know, I'll have to call him, just check in on him, are you okay? So, you know, because I sense it. And even if I say to him, are you okay? And obviously you get the obligatory fine, same with my kids, I can feel that. So are you somebody when someone says they're okay, you know they're not, and you're still probing because you know that they're not okay. They might be telling you they're okay, but you can feel that they're not. Do you feel overwhelmed by multitasking and prefer doing one thing at a time? And again, this could be one thing or another. I'm very good at multitasking. If I focus on one thing, I can get that done. But I'm also good at doing lots of things as well. So I would say, are you somebody who gets overwhelmed, and do you prefer to focus on one thing at a time? There's a really great book, actually. I don't know whether I've got it here on my shelf. No, it's somewhere else. It's actually called The One Thing, because there's been a lot of scientific research to show that, particularly if you're in business or, you know, a day-to-day running of your house, if you focus on one thing, get that done, then move on to one other thing as well. So Sarah, that's something that I was thinking the other day. How do you cope with it all when you are coaching and listening to all their problems? I'll give you some tips, actually. Nothing triggers me anymore. So, you know, I'm very different. And this is why I say to my clients who are researching so much about narcissistic abuse, it's really good to get to know the knowledge about all of that. But you don't need to have a PhD in it, for instance. You know, I do tons of research. I mean, you know, the amount, you should see the books I read, the stuff I listen to. I'm up late because I'm fascinated with it all, and I always want to give my best to my clients. So, you know, and I love science, so I'm always reading up on things. I joined the Neuroscience Academy, for instance, the other day, so I'm being certified in applied neuroscience and brain health. Now, you might think, oh my God, you know, but again, the brain fascinates me. So for me, I need to have those clear boundaries, but I'm really interested in the research surrounding everything. But I know, particularly for my clients, it's just like triggers all of the time for them, but it isn't for me because I'm way down the line and I've worked on myself so much so that I'm in a completely different place. But I am still an empath, you know, so I still have to have these clear boundaries, Sarah, and I'll give you some top tips as well of how to manage all of that too. So, number 16, we've just had about multitasking. Number 17, do you replenish yourself in nature? So you're somebody, when you go outside and you're surrounded by nature, that you just think, you know, it kind of recenters you, it grounds you again as well. So are you somebody that, you know, when you're feeling a bit, you like to be outside, you like to be within nature? Number 18, again, could really relate to this one. Do you need a long time to recuperate after being with difficult people or energy vampires? Don't you just love that phrase, energy vampires? My goodness, I used to surround myself with energy vampires. I was like a magnet to them because I wanted to make them feel better. You know, and obviously I don't do that now. I'm very mindful who I surround myself with. But do you need a long time? Are you surrounding yourself at the moment with lots of energy vampires and you're feeling completely drained? So particularly when you come out of a relationship with a narcissist, it can be really difficult because you feel like you're having to justify yourself all of the time, because obviously they will be this other person, a facade of what they look like to the public persona, but obviously you know very different to how they were with you behind closed doors. So you sometimes feel with friends and family that they obviously might think that you're over exaggerating or you're too sensitive, and you feel like you're having to justify this all of the time, and you're feeling exhausted because they are sucking all the energy out from you as well. So I'll just 1 second, Serena, and I'll tell you what 18 is. It's, do you need a long time to recuperate after being with difficult people or energy vampires? Okay, so like I was just saying, that was a big one for me, that I had to really give my life an audit of who I was surrounding myself with once I realised I was an empath, okay? Because all of this is going to give you knowledge, which is going to give you power, but only if you use it. And I'm a big believer in that. It's no good knowing all of this if you do nothing with it and just sit there feeling like that. It's giving you knowledge, it's giving you power to do something about it. So number 19, do you feel better in small cities or the country than larger cities? You know, so you're somebody that when you go into large cities, and I'll give you an example of this because I don't mind where I am, to be honest. However, I've done a lot of traveling in the past. And I've been to Hong Kong many times, and every time I go to Hong Kong I find it extremely claustrophobic. You know, it's a really fascinating country to go and see, but I find it so busy when you're walking around the streets in Hong Kong that I just don't like it. I just don't like it, and I used to end up going back to my hotel room when it was like at night and stuff and all the lights were on, and you know, just how you envisage Hong Kong to be with all the lights. But there was so many people, and I'm really tall as well, so I felt like I was just, there was all these people everywhere, and I used to really struggle with that, not realising that that is a trait of being an empath, you know, surrounded the crowds, big cities and everything else like that. However, when I go to other cities like Singapore, for instance, yeah, big city, but it's very calm, and I feel that sense of calm when I'm there. Very different, say, for when I was in Hong Kong. Now, they're two obviously different examples of around the world, but you might find, you know, when you go into central London, which is what we were saying at the start, I don't go on the underground. I will use an Uber because I don't like those crowded places. It's that big city kind of things. Yeah, I like going to London, say, to go to the theatre or go and have meetings there as well. So Carol, as well as my own baggage, I carry everyone else's, absolutely. Yeah, sometimes I feel like a luggage carousel at the airport, absolutely. I totally get that, Carol. So yeah, totally with you there, Jan. I know, I used to go there as a child, like, you know, with my mum and my gran, and we used to go and do shopping and stuff, but the thought of doing that now, oh, no thank you. Give me online any day, you know, and I'd rather do that as well. So, number 20, the last one. Do you prefer one-to-one interactions or small groups rather than large gatherings? So if I said to you, right, you're going to go to a massive party, there's going to be 100 people there, you know, it might even be people you know, or would you rather go out for dinner with 6 people where you're all sat around? You know, which would you prefer? So do you prefer one-to-one interactions or small groups or large gatherings? They're the 20 questions, okay? And I'd be really interested, before I tell you, so there's 4 different categories to calculate your results in here. So before I go through them, I'd just be really interested, for those of you who've been on and are obviously been counting maybe on your fingers or writing down, out of those 20, how many were yeses? Okay, that's what we want to know, the number of yeses you had to those 20 questions on the Empath self-assessment quiz. Okay, so how many? So if anyone is willing to share or dares to share how many it was, I would love to know, and then I will give you how you can calculate your results here as well, because remember, you knowing this is now going to empower you. So 18 out of 20, wow, Serena. 16, Carol, wow, okay. Great. So 15, Jan, okay. None of this surprises me, by the way. Lynn, 16, 17 for Fiona, fantastic. Okay, just let me tell you, you are amazing women, okay, incredible. And we need to know how you can utilize this gift of being an empath, okay. But I'm going to explain to you about how much of an empath you are now with those results. So if you answered yes to 1 to 5 questions, you're at least partially an empath, okay? Which obviously doesn't count with any of you because we're all over 15. Responding yes to 6 to 10 questions mean you have moderate empathic tendencies. Again, none of you who dared to share. Responding yes to 11 to 15 means you have strong empathic tendencies, okay? So again, pretty much none of you. I think one of you said 15. Who said 15? So Jan said 15. So maybe you're, but I know you're kind of now more into this. So literally all of you who have been watching this and have done this quiz, you fall into this category, okay? Answering yes to more than 15 questions means that you are a full-blown empath, okay? So you guys watching and who have just done the quiz, you're an empath. Now, you might think, what does that mean? And probably some of the things that I went through, you can really, really relate to as well, particularly because obviously you're all over 15, so you're saying yes to most of these as well. I think I came out at 17 when I did this as well, so same as you, Fiona. Because there was like the low pain threshold wasn't one. Which was the others? Oh, I can't remember. But there was a couple of other ones that I thought, maybe not. So I did it as a no. So mine was 17 out of 20. So again, massive empath here as well. Now, I want to help you understand that being an empath is an absolute gift, okay? It is amazing. But if you don't use that gift wisely, you will be exhausted, you will feel drained, and you will feel like you can't cope, particularly when you are with a narcissist and you have come out of a relationship with a narcissist. Being that codependent from the things that happen in childhood with the lack of self-love, let's park that for now because we know pretty much everybody who finds themselves in a narcissistic relationship will have codependency tendencies as well. Not everybody is an empath, not everybody. I would say from my own research, everybody is codependent, but not everybody is an empath. However, obviously, everybody I work with and everybody I see, pretty much they are an empath as well. So I want you now to think about some of these triggers for you as well. Yeah, absolutely, Jan. And I've got some lists of things of what your triggers are. And again, if you feel like there's any other triggers that you feel like that energy, zapping, release, share as well, okay? So rushing around. I used to find I'm somebody I like to be on time or I like to be early. If I know I'm going to be late or I'm rushing, I don't like it. I don't like it. Okay, so I make sure that I leave early, I have planned everything. But if on the odd occasion I'm running late or something, I absolutely used to hate it. It used to make my heart race. I used to feel like all my energy was going. So again, rushing can be a real trigger for an empath. Okay, so because we know rushing is a trigger, then we need to plan accordingly. So it's knowing some things to help yourself here. Crowds, again. If you know you're not good in crowds, that can be a really big trigger for an empath. Arguing, probably one of my biggest triggers, I would say, in my with my ex-husband as well. It's very different now with my current husband because, of course, we argue. You know, we're human at the end of the day, but I'm very, very different with how I was then. You know, and again, it's about learning those boundaries. Loud sounds can be a big trigger. Low blood sugar. This is a really, really interesting one actually for you. Low blood sugar is a massive trigger for an empath. And I used to say, oh, I'm going into a diabetic coma. I'd be somebody that I would suddenly realise my blood sugars would be too low and I'd want to eat and I'd want to have chocolate or something else. And I'd feel really angry. I'd feel really out of sync. My energy would be going, and so for me that was a biggie. low blood sugar was a real trigger for me being an empath. I really felt that way more than probably the average person as well. And that will go into the emotional eating aspect of it as well. The food addictions, you know, the alcohol addiction, you know, wanting alcohol, wanting food, because the empath then feels overwhelmed. So for instance, if you've got low blood sugar, or maybe you're rushing around and you're late, or maybe you're in a big crowd, because of your energy levels of an empath, you will start to feel them drain. You will then reach for alcohol, you may reach for food, so you become in this cycle. So, you know, when you see people overeating or drinking too much, it's never about the alcohol, it's never about the food, it's going back, why? Why are you doing that? And being an empath, if you don't have those clear boundaries, can be a really contributory factor to that as well. So, chemical sensitivities, we spoke about that as well, about the caffeine, you know, maybe the scratchy clothes, things like this. These can be real triggers. And when I say triggers, these are things that when they happen to you, you don't feel like you're in balance. Your heart might be racing more, you might have sweaty, clammy hands, you will start to feel like more shallow breathing, you'll just start to feel like your energy is going, like you are drained or exhausted, and these are real things to look for as well. Too much socializing, again, you know, I can really relate to that. You know, if you have too many things booked in your diary, and I'm really mindful about this now, if I have too much in my diary as an empath, it really gets me out of balance. So I have to be really careful what I plan into my diary and make sure that I have time to recenter myself, because otherwise it's like, say tomorrow, I've got a really busy day tomorrow, literally from coaching from 9:30 up until 9:30 tomorrow night, literally in between picking the kids up, doing their tea and stuff as well. So if I think too much about that, say 3 or 4 years ago, that would have sent me into overwhelm and anxiety. But I've learned strategies to deal with that, to know that, yes, I've got a busy day, I'm not thinking about it right now, I'm going to enjoy the rest of my evening. After I've done my live, I'm going to have a nice hot bubbly bath, I'm going to sit and watch some TV, I'm going to get a good night's sleep, and then I'm nice and fresh to obviously show up and be the best person I can for my clients tomorrow as well. But I still got to do the school runs, cook their tea, so I still got to do that. So I know tomorrow I'm just going to say, okay, next thing, get my kids to school. Then when I come back, coaching session number 1, go through that. Coaching session number 2. And dealing with those bite-sized chunks like that, for me, I know at some stage by 9:30, I will have finished my day and I'll be sat on the settee and I can relax. But if I woke up tomorrow morning and thought about my whole day and thought, oh my God, I'm hardly going to have, you know, nothing can go wrong, everything is minutely planned and everything else, I could send myself into an overload because I'm an empath. So I manage that by really, really looking at it in little bite-sized chunks for me. That's what works for me. So you knowing you are an empath now means don't just think, well, this is how I feel in this is how I feel in that, that's a trigger for me. You know now, so do something about it. You know, how do you plan around that? Other things as well is feeling trapped. You know, that's a big one for me. I know, and I see this a lot, which is why I get lots of my clients to do a strengths test as well. And I look at their top 5 strengths. And pretty much I'd say over 90% of my clients will have honesty and trust hi Andrea, will have honesty and trust in their top 5 traits. Now you imagine if honesty and trust are really high up on your list of strengths, plus you are an empath, so you know if you're not in balance with the energy surrounding and you're with somebody where there is no trust, there is no honesty, like with a narcissist, because they're kind of saying things to you, your gut is telling you no, you've got all of that cognitive dissonance there as well, with kind of 2 opposing beliefs. You know, they're telling you one thing, but actually you don't think it's that, but then they're telling you it. So you've got this. That can really send an empath, really, really out of balance with that, because you feel trapped. And again, for me, I felt trapped because I'd got my children and I was tired financially, but as an empath with my strengths as honesty and trust, so all of that swirling around, I just felt drained. I felt no energy. Hence why a lot of women and men will suffer with CPTSD, so complex post-traumatic stress disorder, because they feel trapped. And if you're an empath in all of that as well, you know, it's going to heighten those symptoms and physical feelings within yourself as well. So how do you move yourself from being an unaware empath to an empowered empath? Now, I consider myself to be an empowered empath, okay? So somebody that embraces the fact that I am an empath, because I absolutely do. I love being an empath. I genuinely think it's a very special gift to have, because I sense people. I will often get on a coaching call and within 2 minutes they will be crying, okay? And you might think, oh my God, well, that's not good. But it is good because I can sense it, and I normally say, just let it all out. Because you've got to let it all out. We don't want it inside causing disease. We want to let it out. We want to process it as well. And I can sense that. Messages from my clients, I can sense when they are feeling that pain as well. So not seeing the starting chat, but hospitals, they make me feel ill. I kid you not. I walk in healthy and feel ill, dizzy, sick from the stomach within minutes of stepping into one. Absolutely, because you are sensitive to those surroundings, Andrea, and that is because you're absorbing all the energy of the ill people there. And this is really, really common, and it really does happen. So, you know, go back and watch the start as well, because I've done a whole quiz as well there for you. And, you know, you even just saying that, Andrea, I will know you are an empath, because you are absorbing the energies of all of those ill people, like you're taking it on board. It's like sometimes if you're with somebody who has a headache, for instance, all of a sudden you start feeling like you've got a headache because you are absorbing all of those as well. So you like hospitals, okay. I like the caring feel they have and enjoyed working at hospitals. And you know what? You two are highlighting beautifully, actually, the different types of empaths. You know, some of them are emotional empaths. So, you know, for you, Serena, you are an emotional empath like myself. So I love working in hospitals when I used to work in a hospital. So for me, I liked that because I was helping people. Other people where they are really sensitive to the energy vampires, the illnesses there, where they are absorbing all of those like Andrea, then these types of places don't do well. And there are different types of empaths that you can be. Sometimes it's animals, for instance. You know, some people are very animal empathic. So, you know, I'm very much, I wouldn't say I'm a full-blown animal empath, but I certainly know with my dog, she broke her paw on the 1st of February. It's my husband's birthday, and he knocked a chair over and smashed 2 of these tiny little bones, and she's only Diddy, 2 little bones in her paw. And oh my God, did I struggle with that. I felt her pain, literally looking into those brown eyes. She couldn't say anything, but boy, oh boy, did I take on board that pain she was feeling, you know, and that's a dog. And I know to some people who are watching this, they might think, Caroline, you're crazy. What? And I'm sure my husband thinks I'm crazy when I say to him, because I will often say to my son and my husband, you know, because they could be right moaners, the pair of them sometimes, you know, and I will say, don't infect my atmosphere, because I really value my positivity around me. So I'll say, you know, if they're moaning about something, I say, you know, yes, I want to help them to a point, but if they're carrying on and on, and I say, right, that's enough. If you want to go and have a moan, go and moan elsewhere. Don't invade and infect my atmosphere. And I actually say that phrase to them. I'm sure they think I'm mad, but I have to really be careful, because I absorb their energy, because they will tell me and moan at me about everything, so I will absorb all of that. They tottle off and they're like, oh, I'm all right now, and I'm like, oh. So I have to be really, really mindful of that. You know, how many times has a friend called you and told you all their woes, and you absorb all of that, and they're like, oh, I feel so much better now, and you're there thinking, oh my God, I feel so drained now. You know, because I can so relate to that. Not anymore though. Again, so how do you become from an unaware empath? So you're aware of everything that I'm saying, but you still feel really, really drained on all of this, you know. So I want to shift you from being an unaware empath to being an empowered empath, because it's great being an empath, but you need to know how as well. So Dan, yes, you're like me, we like hospitals. That sounds funny, doesn't it? We really like hospitals, but that's to help people. So the first thing is we need to stop absorbing other people's distress. So we really, really need, yes, Fiona, totally get that, but you can stop that, okay? Because this is where you have to take that moment. So Fiona, great example. So if you wake up, because I used to be like this, particularly if my kids woke up in a grumpy mood, I'd be in a great mood, and all of a sudden one of them would be in a grumpy mood, and then I'd be in a grumpy mood because I'd absorb all of that. I now have to consciously make that decision that if they're in a grumpy mood, to actually say to myself, I am not letting them ruin my day. They are being grumpy now. Let them deal with their own grumpiness. I'm going to carry on the day. So it's a real conscious effort with all of that. But I'm also not going to try and make them feel better. I used to try and make them feel better and be saying this and saying that to them and wanting to lift their spirits and make them happy. You know, whereas now I let them learn to deal with all of that, because me trying to do all of that, remember, me trying to make my kids happy or everybody else happy, I'm absorbing all of their negative energy to make them happy so that they're all right then, and then I'm not. And, you know, you can't do that, okay? So the next one is get grounded. This is where meditation or mindfulness, yeah, Serena. So, you know, this is where you really need to center yourself. And meditation, mindfulness, walking away from them. You know, I always think, and don't get me wrong, I shout at my kids. I'm not saying I'm a saint by any stretch of the imagination with that. I shout at my kids too. However, you know, not as much as I used to, because you know, if you're shouting, that's you losing control. So I try and, you know, if I'm starting to feel, oh, I can feel myself getting angry, for instance, I try and lower my voice. So I try and lower my voice in a more calm way so that then I can actually deal with the situation and walk away from the situation. Because if I stay within that situation, I'm absorbing all of these energies and I feel like I'm getting more and more angry then. And I end up shouting. I feel really, really guilty. And actually, you know, it's all blown out of proportion then. So it's just learning these strategies. So if you're somebody that maybe you can feel it with your kids because you just want to make them happy and you feel like when they're grumpy or sad and you're absorbing all of that, it's really good to help them learn to deal with their emotions, you know, and sometimes that means just letting them get on with it as well and then stay grumpy. It's happened today. I totally get it, Serena, but so this is when it has to be a conscious choice. So if your kids are grumpy in the morning and you get up and you're in a good mood and then they're being grumpy, you've got to make the conscious decision to say, that is them, they own their grumpiness, I am not grumpy, they need to learn how to deal with all of that. And that's you teaching them to process their emotions as well. But it's you recognizing that as an empath, you can't kind of keep trying to make them feel better, you know, leave them to it. Because very, very often if you leave them to it, half an hour later, they're okay again. You know, think about it sort of in the hour's time. You don't need to make them less grumpy in that moment right then and there. Let them process it. That's not your, if they're grumpy, they're grumpy. Let them process that. It's not your role to do all of that. You've got to protect yourself and your surroundings. The other thing is grow your friendships and community around you of people maybe that are also fellow empaths. So those of you in my group on Facebook, you know, pretty much we're all empaths in there, which is great because obviously we get it and we support each other as well. But aren't I to teach them to deal with it? Teach them how to deal with it, Serena, because if you're trying to cheer them up all of the time, you're not allowing them to process what it feels like to feel angry, to feel upset, so that then when they're eventually not with you, helping them as such, so you can allow them to process all of this. If they're banging around and they're being rude or this or that, absolutely, there are boundaries of that as well. So you don't need to say, go away as such. You can walk away. So you don't need to tell them to go away. Let them deal with it in that moment, in that space. You walk away, okay? You might just say, when you've calmed down, then we can have a conversation. Or when you've cheered up, we can have a conversation. Because what you are teaching them then, Serena, is that it's okay to feel like that. That's okay to feel grumpy, angry, upset. That's okay. But I'm going to allow you to process all of that whilst I go away and do this, okay? Because ultimately what you are teaching them is something way, way better, okay? If you're always protecting them and wanting to cheer them up, they will become codependent upon you. And I see this a lot where parents, particularly mums, when they come out of relationships with narcissists, become very codependent on their children because they feel so guilty. Oh, I've got to make my kids' life the perfect life then. And actually you're setting yourselves and your children up for either becoming codependent themselves or even a narcissist themselves as well. So we have to allow them to process all of these things, as hard as it is, and it is a learning process, absolutely. You know, with my kid, sometimes when I take my son to school in the car in the morning, he's a right old grump bag. And I just let him be grumpy then. I put the music on and I'm singing. I try and have conversations, and I joke around with him. Like if he says something, I sort of go like this and joke and try and make him laugh and everything too. But ultimately, I'm not having him bringing my energy levels down, and I can choose to do that. So, well, yes, I'm an empath and I can feel his grumpiness, the energy, but I'm not allowing him. I have a barrier and a shield. He wants to be grumpy, that's fine. He's not making me grumpy with him. The other thing is, stop fearing the word no. No is a full sentence. You know, empaths, we are renowned for saying yes to everything to the detriment of ourselves. You know, no is a full sentence. I see this a lot with messages back and forth between ex-partners, because you've got to justify everything, and, you know, rather than just saying no, you've got to have this essay that goes along with it as well to justify it, so they don't think you're a bad mother or bad father or this or that or anything else. No, it doesn't matter. You know what you're like. You know that you're coming always from a place within your heart, and everything. So no is a full sentence. You don't need to clarify that. Practice self-love. This is a big one. You know, it's not you being selfish. It's you really, really looking after yourself. And again, this is a really, really great life lesson to teach your kids, that actually self-love is the number one, the most important, because you want to create yourself as a role model, so they recognize that their happiness is their priority, that they must need to look within, and that will massively help it increase their self-confidence and self-esteem too. Key relationships, really make sure that your relationships with others, so friends and family, partners, you know, maybe explain to them about what it's like to be an empath. They may think you are crazy when you talk about absorbing energies and things like this, you know, and I will often say to my husband about this, and yeah, I'm sure he thinks I'm crazy, but I will say to him, do you know how hard this is for me being an empath? You know, and I will try and explain it to him, and although he probably thinks, what the hell, as such, because he isn't an empath, he respects that because we have a healthy relationship. And then also stop people pleasing. This is a massive one for empaths. You know, stop people pleasing. You know, you people pleasing is only serving the other people you are pleasing, not yourself. You will drain yourself of energy. So, you know, for me, of course, I love helping people, but I've got really clear boundaries, and I will fill myself up first before, and then if I have energy left over, I will then help other people. So for me, running a coaching business, so for, you know, the business that I run, yes, of course, I love helping people, absolutely, and it drives me, and it's my absolute passion and purpose on this planet. But if I didn't have boundaries, if I wasn't an empowered empath and I was a coach, oh my goodness, I'd be burnt out within 3 months, you know, because I wouldn't have that clear set of boundaries around me as well. So yeah, absolutely, Heather. And it's just knowing those boundaries. Who are you pleasing, okay? Are you pleasing them because you suddenly want them to like you? You suddenly want them to recognize what a good person you are? It's looking at the reasons and who they are. So finally, the last thing then that I want to talk about is just 5 top tips to leave you with. 5 top tips to really, really help you realize, being an empath, how you can really utilize that gift but protect yourself. So number 1, you can't save everyone, okay? As much as you may want to try, you can't save everyone. And just knowing that means, you know, start with yourself. Number 2, sometimes you can't save the one you want to. And again, I felt like this in the relationship with my ex, who obviously was a narcissist, because I was married to him, and I understand it, he didn't have a great childhood, so to speak, so I felt sorry for him, so I thought I could save him. And of course, I could never make him happy because he could never make himself happy, but I kept trying and trying because I was a codependent and because I was an empath. So Carol, my daughter, says to me that even after the evidence of what my narcissist did to me, I still find it hard to believe he did these awful things, as I'm an empath, and it's holding back healing. It's holding back healing, Carol, because you're allowing it to hold back healing, because you are allowing what he did to you with the language you are using. So all of this language you're using, what he did to me, what he was this and how he was that, no, I'm an empath, it's holding back my healing. Your brain responds to what you tell it. So if you're telling your brain, the narcissist did this to me and it's holding back my healing, guess what? Of course it is going to hold back your healing, because your brain's going to go, okay, you want me to hold back your healing because that's what you're saying, so that's what I'm going to do. So rather than doing that, it's like, do you know what? As an empath, I gave my all to that relationship. So I know it wasn't my fault, but it is my responsibility now to know as an empath, I'm going to work on myself. So I'm never going to be in a relationship with a narcissist. But he taught me that, yes, I'm an empowered empath to move forward with my life and utilize all the good stuff about me, heal all of those inner wounds that he highlighted for me to go and rock on the best of my life moving forward. So be really mindful of the language you are saying to yourself, because your brain will do what you tell it to do. So Carol, by nature of you saying it's holding back my healing, and you keep saying all of that, it will hold back your healing. You have to change that inner language. And that's when I talk about that triangle, when you have the triggers, you know, how to shift your mood, the focus, the language, and the physiology. Because if you change all of these, then it's really, really important for you to move on from that. So the next one, if a situation is awful, you must get out, even if others don't. So if you're in a situation, maybe at a party or anything else, and you feel it's not great for you, leave, move, go. This is your life, okay? Exit the building, don't stay. Number 4, putting up healthy boundaries may hack people off. You know, I lost friends when I started to create boundaries because they were so used to me being a doormat all of the time and doing everything they wanted to the detriment of myself. But you know what? They're not true friends. They aren't true friends if they're like that. That's why I always said divorce became my superpower, because it gave me a chance to give my whole life an audit. Friendships, family, relationships, career, everything. Because I realised that I was an empath. My narcissist had highlighted inner wounds that I needed to heal, which I did, for me to go on and live the best life possible, you know, and so there's real gratitude there with all of this, because I love what I do, as you can probably tell. And then the last one, which is a biggie, take care of yourself. This isn't you being selfish, it's for survival. All of the clients that I see coming out of a relationship with a narcissist have feelings of not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy, not feeling lovable. And it normally will go back to their childhood, where obviously we need to reset all of that. But ultimately, self-love, you looking after yourself, is not selfish. Other people may not like it because they're so used to you doing everything for them. So you're going to have a transitional period with all of this as well. So let me just go back. Do you have any good mottos for us empaths to say for helping ourselves? Really keep at the forefront of your mind, Serena, this is your life. This is not a dress rehearsal. If people don't like what you say or what you do, they need to own that. This is your life. You need to be able to look yourself in the mirror. Imagine living your life free of all of that baggage of trying to make everybody else happy. Am I good enough? Am I worthy enough? Am I lovable enough? Imagine freeing yourself from all of that baggage. Imagine waking up tomorrow not worrying what other people are going to think of you, because you can't control that. People will have an opinion of you. In fact, you know, one of my clients who is listening, you know, I sent her a message today and I just said, you know, everyone's got an opinion, just like belly buttons, but they are useless, just as other people's opinions are, because they don't know what goes on behind closed doors. They don't walk your shoes or anything. So you have to do what is right for you first. Then obviously when you've got your children, absolutely then. But you need to put yourself even before your children with all of this. It's so important, because then you're going to teach your children self-love. Because if I said to you right now, do you want your kids feeling how you do right now at your age? And I'd hazard a guess, a lot of you would say, oh my God, no. But you've got to be the light then for them. You have to be their role model. And that means you putting yourself first, creating a life, because you still have a life, you know, a life of fun and laughter and excitement, you know, and it might seem like you're in the bottom of a pit because you're in the eye of the storm right now, but it absolutely can change. But you've got to be proactive, and you know, that's why I always say knowledge is power, but only if you choose what to do with it. So my ex is predictable in his nastiness, and I shouldn't be surprised by his behaviour, but I'm always shocked. Is this because I'm an empath? Yeah, it is to a point, a codependent empath, because ultimately, Andrea, You always want to see the best in people. But what you're doing is you're waiting, and again, a phrase I use a lot, you waiting for them to behave a certain way, say sorry, validate, suddenly say, you know, you're right, is like you drinking rat poison and expecting the rat to die, because that's not going to happen. So you really have to focus on yourself here. I always say, lower your expectations. Have no expectations, because then you won't be surprised. You know, I know now if I get emails from my ex or anything like that, nothing shocks me, nothing surprises me. 9 years on, I still get the little digs all of the time in the emails. Phew, straight over my head. I'm not waiting for him to behave a certain way. It's just, I know how he is, you know, and it's just water off a duck's back to me now as well. So this is when you've got to make a conscious decision now. You know what, from this day forward, I'm not going to be shocked because I know what he's going to be like. So rather than you focusing on what he's going or not going to do, I'm going to refocus all that energy waiting for him to be like this, or feeling sorry for him, or any of all of that. All of that energy that I was expelling there, boom, back to myself. I'm using it on me because I deserve that energy to help me heal and recover as well. So Melissa, what would be an example of good, clear boundaries? So that depends what we're talking about here, Melissa. You know, if you're talking, say, about your ex in all of this, no energy needs to go to your ex whatsoever. Don't be worrying what they're doing unless there's any safeguarding issues. But whatever they're getting on and doing, meeting somebody else, doing this, doing that, doesn't matter, because you've got no control over it. So you need to have really clear boundaries around you. And I would say, if you start to feel funny in your gut is great, your second brain, okay? If you're feeling funny in your gut, follow that, okay? Trust your gut, because I hazard a guess, all of you, when you all think back about gut feelings, you all think, God, I should have followed my gut, or why didn't I do that? I hear it all of the time. So the moment you start feeling something that isn't right, ask yourself why. They are crossing a boundary, and don't allow that to happen. So don't just always think all of these things. Judge how you feel as well. If you feel out of kilter, if you feel out of balance, it's because there's something telling you is not right. So follow that gut. Why am I feeling like this? You know, I will often say when I get messages from my clients, you know, why are you feeling like that? Why do you think that's triggered? Because it's all very well just as talking about the here and the now, but I want to know, why did that trigger you? Because again, I don't just want to treat the symptom, I want to look at the cause. What caused you to get a trigger like that as well? So then we can treat the cause so you don't get the symptoms again. So follow your gut, create those boundaries around you. Self-love is the most important, you know, and if people are asking you to do things and inside you're thinking, oh God, I don't want to do that, you know, but oh, I need to make them happy. A really good method that I use a lot now, and I still use it, is I need to check my diary, let me get back to you, okay? So rather than whenever anyone used to ask me anything, oh yeah, okay, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll, you know, stick a broom up my backside and I'll sweep the floor at the same time kind of thing as well. I always say now, let me check my diary and I'll get back to you, because then I can have time to recenter and think, okay, how can I send the message back to say no? And then I can just send a short message back, I'm really sorry, I'm busy at that time. And then it's done. I don't need to justify it. I don't need to put an essay with it or anything as well, but it will buy you some time. So whilst you're learning, just buy yourself some time by having little sentences. Write down maybe 3 key sentences, log them in your brain, and these are your go-to sentences. You know, if you're finding yourself getting into these situations all the time and you wish you couldn't, you're saying yes to everything, for instance, or you're getting embroiled in things that you know you shouldn't be, find yourself a go-to sentence, log it in your brain, and then you know you can say that to go away to buy you some time as well whilst you're learning to just say no in the instance as well. So, Carol, it's confusing sometimes, as like my ex, who was a covert narcissist, he could be kind, help around the house, and he himself could seem empathetic. Is that just part of narcissism? Absolutely it is. It's all a lie, because they will do all of these things to gain supply. A narcissist, one of the traits of a narcissist, as listed in the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual from the American Psychiatric Association, and that's where obviously all the traits and where we diagnose narcissistic personality disorder, the number one thing in there is they have no empathy. They can act like they have empathy to get that narcissistic supply, absolutely, but they have zero empathy, and that is a massive one, massive difference between a narcissist and not. And in fact, there's a lot of research, you know, a while ago that Asperger's used to be in the DSM actually as well. And very, very similar traits actually initially for narcissistic personality disorder. But there's two clear differences between someone with Asperger's, although we don't use Asperger's now, we say on the spectrum, and narcissistic personality disorder. Asperger's, they have empathy. Narcissist, no empathy whatsoever. So again, they're just trying to get supply there, Carol. And again, stop focusing on what he is doing or what he did and he was this and he was that, okay? Every single time you're giving your energy still to him, switch it back to yourself. It doesn't deserve even one teeny tiny bit of your energy thinking, because okay, you could sit and think, Carol, but he was really, really nice around the house and he was this and he was that, okay? Where's that going to get you? Nowhere, nowhere. Yes, he might have been nice and kind, just as my ex was nice and kind on various occasions as well, to get whatever he wanted in that moment too. But that didn't then mean all the other stuff I deserved to have the same as you. You didn't. So again, just because they can be nice doesn't mean that they can have any empathy. They're just trying to get the supply. So yes, he'd be talking to someone, being all nice, then moan about the matter. Yeah, exactly. So again, you know all of this. So you're kind of answering your questions as you're kind of putting them down, Carol. So listen to your answers. Don't give your energy to him anymore because he doesn't deserve it. So I hope that's really helped lots of you. Really great live this evening. I really, really enjoyed talking about being an empath as well. So you know what? It is a gift, absolutely, but you need to have absolute boundaries, okay? Your energy is vital. Your energy is precious. And if you haven't got that energy to give to someone else, don't do it. They might not like it, but they need to go and own that, okay? You're not on this earth to help everybody else. You're on this earth to help yourself first. Then when you have other energy, and believe me, when you become an empowered empath and you put yourself first, okay, you can give so much more to everybody else, but to the people who need it and want it, okay? So we're just redistributing our energy then to those who need it and want it. So Jan, nice and kind to make themselves good, absolutely. So I hope you all have a fantastic week. Again, for those of you, if any of you are watching on replay, then obviously just put #replay as well. You're welcome, Carol. And I will see you again next Sunday. If anyone wants to come in the group, if they're not in my divorce and breakup support group after narcissistic abuse, drop me a message or comment below and I can send you the link to be added as well. Absolutely, boundaries, boundaries, boundaries in everything. And sometimes that word makes it sound like you're being mean or cruel, but it isn't. You're just putting yourself first, and that is the most important thing. So, so important to do. It is not selfish. Let me highlight that. You putting yourself first is not selfish. It's actually you being able to do so much more. You can be a better mum, a better dad, a better daughter, sister, friend, worker, business owner. Absolutely. You do that, you will be able to do so much more with your life, and the sky is the limit. It really, really is. So take care, everybody. Have a fantastic week, and I will see you again next Sunday night at 8 o'clock GMT.